In 1994, these hills bore witness to unspeakable loss. Roads fell silent, villages emptied, smoke marked the horizon. Today, the same hills carry a different story. A city rising, streets alive with purpose.
How does a nation recover from one of the darkest chapters in human history? How does it go from the depths of genocide to becoming one of Africa's most praised models for development and order? This is the story of Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills, a country defined by both profound tragedy and remarkable resilience. To understand Rwanda today, we must first look back. Situated in the heart of Africa, this small, landlocked nation is one of the continent's most densely populated. Before colonialism, Rwanda was a centralized kingdom. The terms Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa were more like social and economic classes than rigid ethnic groups. A Hutu who accumulated wealth, particularly cattle, could rise to Tutsi status. Society was fluid, and a strong monarchy provided stability. But this all changed with the arrival of European colonizers, first Germany and then Belgium. The Belgians, obsessed with racial theories, didn't just observe the social structure, they weaponized it. They introduced ethnic identity cards, freezing what was once a flexible system. They favored the Tutsi minority for administrative roles, claiming they were a superior, non-African race. These policies didn't just create division, they institutionalized it, planting the seeds of hatred that would later erupt into unimaginable violence. When Rwanda gained independence in 1962, the political power flipped. The Hutu majority took control, and decades of persecution against the Tutsis began. There were mass killings. Waves of Tutsi refugees fled to neighboring countries like Uganda and Burundi, and a deep-seated animosity simmered. The Rwandan Patriotic Front, or RPF, was formed by Tutsi exiles in Uganda, aiming to reclaim their rights and return home. Then came the 100 Days of Horror. On April 6, 1994, the plane carrying Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu, was shot down. This act became the trigger for a meticulously planned genocide. Hutu extremist leaders seized control and unleashed a campaign of terror against the Tutsi population and any Hutus who opposed them. For approximately 100 days, the world watched in near-total silence. Radio stations broadcasted hate, calling on ordinary citizens to kill their neighbors. Using machetes, clubs, and guns, militias and civilians murdered between 800,000 and 1 million people. It was a systematic, state-sponsored effort to annihilate an entire group of people. The international community, paralyzed by indecision, largely failed to intervene. The genocide was only stopped when the RPF, led by a young commander named Paul Kagame, fought its way across the country and captured the capital, Kigali, in July 1994. They inherited a nation in ruins. The land was filled with mass graves, the population was traumatized, and the social fabric was completely destroyed. What happened next is one of the most astonishing turnarounds in modern history. Under Kagame's leadership, the new government embarked on a radical mission of reconstruction. Their mantra became "never again." The first step was to dismantle the very idea of ethnic division. Ethnic identity cards were abolished. Speaking of Hutu or Tutsi in public discourse was discouraged, replaced by a singular identity, Rwandan. To deal with the overwhelming number of genocide perpetrators, the country revived a traditional justice system called Gacaca courts. These community-led tribunals were designed to process cases quickly, deliver justice, and foster reconciliation at a local level. While not without flaws, they were a pragmatic solution to an impossible problem. From the ashes, a new Rwanda began to rise. Paul Kagame, who became president in 2000, implemented a vision centered on discipline, order, and rapid development. The government poured resources into health, education, and infrastructure. Today, Rwanda's capital, Kigali, is renowned as one of the cleanest and safest cities in Africa. There's a mandatory national day of community service called Umuganda, where citizens work together to clean their neighborhoods. This collective effort symbolizes the new national spirit. Economically, the transformation has been stunning. Rwanda has consistently been one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. It has leveraged its unique assets, from high-quality coffee and tea to high-end tourism centered on its famous mountain gorillas. The nation has also branded itself as a hub for technology and international conferences, with the iconic Kigali Convention Center becoming a symbol of this new ambition. Socially, the progress is just as impressive. In a remarkable step toward healing and inclusivity, Rwanda has become a world leader in gender equality. Today, over 60% of its parliamentary seats are held by women, the highest proportion in the world. This was a deliberate policy to empower women, who were seen as key to rebuilding the nation's social fabric after the genocide disproportionately targeted men. Furthermore, the country has achieved near-universal healthcare coverage and boasts some of the highest vaccination rates on the continent. However, Rwanda's story is complex. The model of governance is often described as development-first authoritarianism. President Kagame is credited with bringing stability and prosperity, but he is also criticized by international human rights organizations for suppressing political dissent, restricting media freedom, and maintaining a tight grip on power. Critics argue that the peace and order come at the cost of civil liberties. On the world stage, Rwanda is an active and assertive player. It is a major contributor to African Union peacekeeping missions and a vocal advocate for development and climate action. Yet, its role in the region is not without controversy, particularly its alleged involvement in the conflicts in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. Today, memory is a pillar of Rwandan society. The genocide is not hidden away. It is actively remembered. Memorials like the Kigali Genocide Memorial serve as powerful, heartbreaking reminders of the past and a solemn promise for the future. Every April, the country observes Kwibuka, a 100-day period of mourning and commemoration, ensuring that the lessons of 1994 are never forgotten. Rwanda's journey is a profound paradox. It is a story of incredible recovery from unspeakable violence, of breathtaking development achieved through strict state control, and of national unity forged in the shadow of ethnic division. It stands as a powerful, if complicated, testament to the human capacity for both destruction and renewal. The land of 1,000 hills teaches us that even after the darkest of nights, a new dawn is possible. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as compelling as we do, please like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you in the next video.